The building looked beautiful from the outside. Tall glass walls reflected the city lights, making it seem like a place where only important people belonged. Inside, expensive offices stayed bright late into the night. Most employees had already gone home, but one man was just starting his shift. He pushed a cleaning cart slowly across the marble floor, moving with tired steps he had learned to hide. For him, this place was not about power or success. It was about survival. He worked as a janitor in the same building for many years. People rarely looked at his face. Some did not even notice him at all. He cleaned their offices, emptied their trash, wiped their desks, and erased the signs of their busy days. He knew their habits without ever knowing their names. He arrived before dawn and left long after sunset. The job was hard, but it paid the rent and kept food on the table. On certain evenings, his daughter waited for him after school. She sat quietly in a small break area near the supply room, doing homework or reading borrowed books. She never complained. She understood her father worked late because he had no choice. Her mother had passed away years earlier, leaving just the two of them to face the world together. That loss shaped them both in quiet ways. The girl was not loud or demanding. She watched more than she spoke. While her father cleaned offices, she listened to the sounds of the building. She heard voices through half-open doors. Sometimes they were angry, sometimes confident, sometimes tired. Many of those voices spoke different languages. The building welcomed visitors from many countries, and meetings often continued late into the night. At first, the words sounded like noise to her. But slowly, patterns began to form. She noticed how certain sounds repeated. She paid attention to tone and rhythm. When people laughed, she laughed silently, even if she did not yet understand why. Curiosity grew inside her, quiet but strong. Her father noticed her interest but did not push her. He was a simple man who believed in patience and effort. He often told her that listening was just as important as speaking. Those words stayed with her. When they went home at night, she asked small questions about the languages she heard. He did not always know the answers, but he encouraged her to keep learning. Money was always tight. Their apartment was small, with old furniture and thin walls, but it was clean and warm. Books were not something they could afford to buy often. The girl visited the public library whenever she could. She borrowed language books meant for adults, even though the words were difficult. She listened to free lessons online using old headphones that sometimes stopped working. She practiced alone, speaking softly so she would not disturb neighbors. At school, she rarely mentioned her interest. She did not want attention. She had seen how quickly people judged others based on clothes, skin color, or job titles. She had already learned that being underestimated could be painful, but also strangely freeing. Back at the building, most employees thought the janitor's daughter was just passing time. Some smiled politely. Others ignored her. No one asked what she was reading or why she wrote strange words in her notebook. The security guards saw her often and nodded, but they never imagined she understood the conversations happening upstairs. Her father worked with pride. Even when treated as invisible, he believed honest work mattered. He never complained in front of his daughter. He wanted her to believe the world could be kind, even if it often wasn't. He taught her respect, discipline, and quiet strength. One night, the girl sat near a conference room where voices sounded tense. She did not understand everything, but she recognized frustration. She picked up pieces of sentences in different languages, mixing in her mind like puzzle parts. She wrote notes quickly, then stopped, realizing she understood more than she thought. She felt a strange mix of excitement and fear. She wondered if her learning meant anything beyond personal interest. After all, who would listen to her? She was just a janitor's daughter sitting on a plastic chair near a cleaning closet. The thought made her close her notebook and tuck it into her bag. At home that night, She stayed awake longer than usual. She replayed the voices she had heard, translating them in her mind. For the first time, she felt that her quiet habit might have real value. Still, she said nothing. She believed some things needed time. Days turned into months. The building remained the same. Busy mornings, quiet nights. The janitor continued pushing his cart. His daughter continued waiting, listening, learning. Her language skills grew quietly, without certificates or applause. She learned not just words, but meaning. She learned how emotions changed language and how respect could be lost or restored through tone. The people in the building continued their lives, unaware. They walked past her, holding phones and coffee cups, discussing deals worth more money than she had ever seen. They did not know that in the shadows of their success, a young girl was preparing for a moment she could not yet imagine. For now, she remained invisible. And in that invisibility, her story was only beginning. The girl's routine slowly became part of who she was. School during the day, the office building in the evening, and quiet learning at night. While other children spent time playing games or watching shows, she spent hours listening to voices from around the world. She did not see this as a sacrifice. For her, it felt natural, like breathing. At school, she stayed mostly quiet. Teachers noticed she was intelligent, but she did not raise her hand often. When asked questions, she answered clearly, without showing off. Some classmates thought she was shy. Others thought she was strange because she preferred books over gossip. No one guessed how sharp her mind truly was. Languages became her safe space. Each new word felt like opening a door. She learned greetings first, then simple sentences, then full conversations. She learned how the same idea could sound gentle in one language and strong in another. She noticed how respect was shown differently across cultures. These details fascinated her more than grammar rules. At the office building, she began to recognize regular visitors. Business partners from other countries arrived often, speaking fast and confidently. Sometimes they argued. Sometimes they joked. She understood enough now to follow parts of their discussions. She realized that even powerful people made mistakes when communication failed. Her father watched her grow with quiet pride. He noticed how she listened more than she spoke, how her eyes followed conversations she should not have understood. He never asked too many questions. He trusted her. When she told him she wanted to learn more languages, he nodded and said knowledge was something no one could ever take away. Money problems continued to press on them. There were nights when dinner was simple and small. Bills arrived that caused her father to sigh deeply before hiding the paper away. The girl saw these moments and learned another lesson early in life. Survival required strength, but also patience. She helped where she could. She kept her grades high to avoid extra costs. She never asked for expensive things. Instead, she asked for time at the library or access to the old computer they shared. She used every free resource available, teaching herself pronunciation by replaying recordings again and again. Sometimes she made mistakes and felt embarrassed even though no one was watching. She mispronounced words. She mixed accents. But she never quit. Failure did not scare her. Being unseen did. Late one evening, while waiting near a meeting room, she heard a heated discussion. The voices were sharp, and tension filled the air. She understood enough to know that something important was going wrong. The people inside were speaking different languages, interrupting each other, misunderstanding tone and intention. She felt her heart beat faster. For the first time, she realized how dangerous misunderstanding could be. These were not just words. These were decisions that could affect jobs, families, and futures. She wanted to help, but fear stopped her. Who would listen to her voice? She stayed quiet, but her mind worked fast. She replayed the conversation, translating it smoothly in her head. She noticed where things went wrong, where one sentence sounded rude when it was not meant to be. She imagined how she would have explained it differently. That night, she wrote everything down in her notebook. Not names or details, just lessons. She wrote about tone, pauses, and respect. She wrote about how silence could sometimes be more powerful than speech. As weeks passed, her confidence grew quietly. She tested herself by watching international news without subtitles. She listened to interviews and repeated them softly. Her pronunciation became clearer. Her understanding became deeper. She no longer translated word by word. She understood meaning. Her father noticed a change. She seemed more focused, more certain. When he asked her what she wanted to do in the future, she did not give a clear answer. She only said she wanted to help people understand each other. He smiled, even if he did not fully understand what she meant. In the building, changes were happening too. Important meetings were being scheduled. The mood felt tense. Employees whispered about a major deal that could change the company's future. The girl heard fragments of conversations and felt a strange pull, as if everything she had learned was slowly leading towards something. Still, she stayed in her place. She did her homework. She waited patiently. She listened. One evening, as she packed her bag to leave, she heard raised voices again. This time, fear mixed with urgency. She stood still, frozen between choice and doubt. Her story was moving forward. Whether she was ready or not, she took a deep breath and reminded herself of her father's words. Listening mattered. Understanding mattered. And sometimes, courage began with one small step. The moment had not arrived yet, but it was getting closer. The atmosphere inside the building began to change. People walked faster. Conversations stopped when others approached. Meetings stretched longer than usual. Even those who usually smiled looked tense. Something important was happening, and everyone could feel it. The girl noticed it right away. She had learned to read rooms before people. She could hear worry in voices, even when words sounded polite. She sensed pressure in pauses and sharpness in simple greetings. This was different from the usual busy energy. This felt heavy. One evening, she arrived with her father as usual. He pushed his cleaning cart, greeting security with a nod. She followed quietly, her backpack light, but her notebook full. As they passed the elevators, she heard voices arguing softly but urgently. Multiple languages overlapped, creating confusion instead of clarity. She sat in her usual spot, but she could not focus on homework. The sounds pulled at her attention. She recognized the language patterns immediately. These were high-level discussions, serious decisions, the kind that could change many lives beyond the building. Inside one of the large conference rooms, a group of executives sat around the long table. Across from them were international partners who had flown in for a major deal. Papers were spread everywhere. Screens glowed with charts and numbers. But the problem was not the numbers. It was the words. A professional interpreter tried to keep up, but something was off. The tone kept shifting. What was meant to sound cautious came across as rude. What was meant to sound confident sounded arrogant. Small misunderstandings stacked on top of each other, building quiet resentment. The girl listened carefully. She understood nearly everything now. She felt tension rise inside her chest as she realized how badly things were going. One wrong sentence could undo months of work. One misunderstood phrase could destroy trust. She glanced at her father. He was busy wiping down a nearby hallway, unaware of the storm forming just a few steps away. She wanted to say something to him, but what could she say? That she understood a conversation meant for powerful people? That she might help? Her heart raced. Doubt crept in. She reminded herself of her place. She was young. She had no title, no badge, No invitation. Inside the room, voices grew sharper. A chair scraped loudly against the floor. Someone stood up. The deal was slipping away. The interpreter paused, searching for words. Silence filled the room, thick and uncomfortable. The girl felt it like a weight pressing on her chest. She knew exactly what needed to be said. She knew how to say it gently, clearly, respectfully. Her fingers tightened around her notebook. Every lesson she had written came rushing back. Tone, respect, meaning. She stood up, without fully realizing she was doing it. Her legs felt weak as she took a few steps closer to the door. Her mind screamed at her to stop. This was not her world. She could be punished, embarrassed, ignored. But then she remembered nights at the library. Long hours listening, repeating, failing, trying again. She remembered her father's tired hands and quiet pride. She remembered learning not for attention, but for understanding. The door was slightly open. She could see everyone clearly now. Faces tight with stress. Eyes filled with impatience. Her voice came out soft at first, but steady. She spoke respectfully, addressing no one directly. She clarified a single sentence that had caused confusion. She explained its meaning, not just its translation. She did it calmly, without drama. The room froze. Every head turned toward her. Shock filled the air. A young girl standing in the doorway, speaking fluently, correcting what professionals had missed. She continued, gaining confidence with each word. She translated the response from the other side, adjusting tone so it sounded respectful instead of defensive. She bridged the emotional gap that had been growing all evening. The international partners exchanged looks. Their expressions softened. Shoulders relaxed. One of them nodded slowly. The executives looked stunned. No one interrupted her. No one told her to stop. She finished and went quiet, suddenly aware of where she was. Fear rushed back in. Her hands trembled slightly. Then someone spoke, calmly, with relief. The conversation resumed, smoother this time. The tension did not disappear, but it eased. The deal was no longer collapsing. It was breathing again. She stepped back into the hallway, heart pounding. She felt exposed, but also strangely calm. She had done what felt right. Her father approached, confusion on his face. He asked softly if everything was okay. She nodded, unsure how to explain. Inside the conference room, the meeting continued late into the night. Outside, the girl sat quietly again, invisible once more, but changed. She did not know what would happen next. She did not know if she would be praised or punished. But she knew one thing for certain. Her voice had mattered, and the story was far from over. The night did not end when the meeting paused. It stretched on, heavy and uncertain. People stepped out of the conference room to make phone calls. Others whispered in corners. The building felt awake in a way it usually wasn't. The girl sat where she always did, hands folded in her lap. Her heart still beat fast, but her breathing slowly steadied. She replayed what she had said, wondering if she had crossed a line. No one had told her to leave. No one had asked her to return. Silence followed her like a question. Her father finished his work nearby and glanced at her more than once. He could tell something was different. She gave him a small smile to say she was okay. He trusted her and said nothing. Inside the conference room, the conversation had changed. People spoke more carefully. The interpreter asked for clarification instead of rushing. The international partners asked questions that showed openness instead of doubt. The tension softened, replaced by focus. At one point, a senior executive stepped into the hallway. He looked around, searching. His eyes landed on the girl. For a moment, he hesitated, unsure. Then he walked closer and asked, gently, if she could help again. She stood up slowly. Her legs felt steady this time. She followed him back into the room, aware of every step. Faces turned toward her again, but now with curiosity instead of shock. She did not try to impress anyone. She simply listened. When asked, she translated clearly, choosing words with care. She adjusted tone, softened edges, explained intent. She spoke when needed and stayed quiet when silence did more good. Hours passed. Coffee cups emptied and were refilled. Papers were rewritten. Small misunderstandings were untangled one by one. Each time, the girl helped gently guide the conversation back to understanding that no one raised their voice anymore. Respect filled the space. The deal, once close to collapse, slowly found its balance again. Near dawn, the final terms were agreed upon. The room let out a breath it had been holding all night. The agreement was not perfect, but it was solid. Trust had been repaired. The girl stepped back again, returning to the hallway. Exhaustion hit her all at once. She sat down, shoulders heavy, but her mind felt clear. Her father approached, concern in his eyes. She told him quietly that everything was fine. He nodded, still unsure, but proud without knowing why. As the sun rose outside the glass walls, people began leaving the building. Some looked at the girl differently now. Not with pity or indifference, but with respect. Later that morning, the CEO asked to see her and her father. The request felt unreal. Her father straightened his uniform, nervous but calm. The girl held her notebook tightly. In a simple office, the CEO thanked her. Not loudly, not dramatically, just honestly. He said the deal was worth more than money. It was about trust, and she had protected that. He asked how she learned so many languages. She answered simply, listening, practice, time. He nodded, thoughtful. He said talent often hides where no one thinks to look. There were no promises made that day. No instant changes. Just acknowledgement. As they left the office, the girl felt lighter. She knew her life had shifted, even if nothing looked different yet. She walked out of the building with her father, morning air cool on their faces. He placed a hand on her shoulder and said he was proud of her. She smiled, knowing the hardest part was still ahead. The world had finally heard a voice. Now it would decide what to do with it. The days after that night felt quiet, but different. The building returned to its usual rhythm. People walked with purpose again. Meetings started and ended on time. Laughter returned to hallways that had been tense just days before. From the outside, it looked like nothing had changed. But for the girl and her father, everything had. She went back to school as usual. She sat in the same seat, opened the same books, and listened to the same lessons. But inside her, something had shifted. She carried a new awareness, not pride, but confidence. She knew now that her voice had value. Even in places where she once felt invisible. At the office building, people began greeting her differently. Small nods, soft smiles, simple respect. No one made a big show of it. That mattered to her. She did not want attention. She wanted understanding. Her father continued his work with the same dedication. He pushed his car through the hallways, cleaning offices late into the night. But now, some people stopped to thank him. Some asked how his daughter was doing. He answered politely, still humble, still steady. One afternoon, an email was sent across the company. It spoke about teamwork, respect, and unexpected talent. It did not mention names. It did not tell a dramatic story. But everyone who had been there understood. Soon after, the girl was invited to sit in on language sessions with the company's communication team. Not as an employee, not as a symbol, just as a helper. She listened, offered suggestions when asked, and stayed quiet when she was not needed. She learned something important during those sessions. Even powerful people were often unsure. They needed help just like anyone else. Understanding this made her less afraid of the world. At home, life slowly improved. Not suddenly, not magically, but steadily. Bills were paid on time. There was food without worry. Small things mattered most. Peace mattered most. Her father remained the same man she had always known, hard-working, gentle, proud without needing praise. One evening, while sharing a simple meal, he told her that he had always known she was special. He just did not know how the world would find out. She smiled and told him the world did not need to rush. Weeks passed, then months. Opportunities came quietly. A scholarship offer arrived, recognizing her language skills and dedication. It was not loud or public. It was respectful. She accepted it with gratitude, knowing how many doors it would open. Before leaving the building for the last time as a regular visitor, she stood in the hallway where she had waited so many nights. She remembered sitting there with her notebook, listening, learning, believing in silence. She realized that waiting had never been a weakness. It had been preparation. Her father walked beside her as they stepped outside together. The glass building reflected the sky just as it always had. But now it reflected possibility. She did not forget where she came from. She did not forget the long nights, the quiet corners, or the feeling of being unseen. Those memories kept her grounded. Her story spread slowly, passed from one person to another. Not as a miracle, but as a reminder. Talent does not wear uniforms. Wisdom does not ask permission. Years later, when she stood in rooms like that conference hall again, she remembered the girl she once was. She remembered listening before speaking. She remembered choosing respect over fear. And every time she helped people understand each other, she honored the man who taught her the power of quiet strength. The janitor was no longer invisible. His daughter was no longer unseen. Their story did not end with a deal. It began with dignity, and it continued with purpose.